Make a note that Aaron and Mary are not here. Aaron will be here shortly. Mary's in Florida.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So weird.
Okay, please note that we have an amended agenda tonight, so whenever you make the motion, we move the early childhood presentation immediately after approval and adopt the agenda. So the motion needs to read amended agenda, please. I need a motion to approve and adopt the amended agenda. So moved.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and second. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? I heard 5-0. Early childhood presentation. Dr. Berger?
Okay, I have lots of friends out here that are ready to sing a song that we've been working on for a long time. So they're going to come on in and get set up, I think. Oh, we got another one coming in here, so. Hello. Miss Jennifer.
Hi, baby.
You go wherever you're going to get a better shot than I am.
Okay. If you need to move around so you can see your kiddo, we're good with that.
Sorry.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about winter and snow. So since November, I think we've been praying for a snow day. I think that was the meaning behind the song. So Miss Riley is gonna turn on our song and we'll get started. And then after that, I have a presentation for someone. So here she is. Okay, good. we have a certificate that we would like Miss Jackie to come up. So
Trade your stuff like that.
sure. So Miss Jackie retired in December, and we at the preschool celebrated her all month long. But I wanted to make sure you got recognized here. So we miss you already, and I don't want to cry. So this is for you. This is for your a certificate of appreciation for your 15 plus years. So
Thank you.
And Angel has found some stuff you must have accidentally left behind. So she wanted to make sure you got those as well. So
Those from my West days.
yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, early childhood kiddos, if you don't want to stay, you guys are more than welcome to go, or you can stay. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackie.
Good job, guys.
Bye, Don. We're leaving.
See you, take care.
Thank you. Good hugs. Good hugs. All right. See you later. Oh, right here. Here's one.
Bye, Brad. Take care. Good seeing you.
You did amazing. I heard your loud, beautiful voice.
I'll close these.
Hey, Kelly. Thank you. Sure. That was nice.
Great.
Next item on the agenda is the MSBA board report. Amy?
Welcome to 2023 and the January MSBA Board Report. We begin the new year with a look back at last year.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
In the early 1960s, John F. Kennedy was touring NASA headquarters. During his visit, he encountered a custodian mopping the floors. Kennedy asked the employee, "Why are you working so late?" The custodian replied, "Because I'm not mopping the floors, I'm putting a man on the moon." The takeaway being, the day-to-day work of all connects to the ultimate goal. That mentality was on full display in your work in 2022. In public education, the vision of a better future for all communities and a mission that strives for the success of all students is as audacious and aspirational as ever. But the day-to-day work from school leaders across the state throughout some of the most challenging circumstances served as an inspiration and will continue to guide us. There were many challenges to be faced in 2022, but once again, engaged community champions rose to the occasion. The 2022 legislative session convened on January 5th. Once again this past year, the advocacy efforts of Missouri school board members had a significant impact on legislation and policy being considered on the state and national levels. Along with parents and community members, local school leaders made their voices heard and advocated on behalf of students and districts across the state.
We have to be an advocate for children across the district. And so when I think about it, I'm advocating for the children that don't live in my house, that don't have a mom that might show up to something and might not know all of, how they can express themselves. So I can be that voice.
Last year, it was as apparent as ever that teachers make the difference. Not all heroes wear capes. Some look just like the rest of us and are hiding in plain sight, inside the four walls of our Missouri classrooms, making a difference and igniting the spark inside students every day. As teacher shortages struck many districts, communities and school boards around the state worked tirelessly to create solutions to uplift and protect the teachers making a difference.
My school board supported me by engaging in tough conversations, some very intense fellowship. That concept of being a champion for our public schools and being a champion in our public schools. And I appreciate all of you for being both of those things.
Our boards of education in Missouri are diligently working to find solutions, and we will continue to do so as we strive to strengthen that workforce. Now, our work is not done as far as the commission. The next thing we really need to look at, and I know there's not a school district in the state of Missouri that hasn't come across this, but another committee is formed to look at the culture and climate.
Ultimately, one of the greatest factors in determining whether or not school districts achieve student success is an engaged and effective local school board. The day-to-day work of implementing policy, board training and development, and ensuring school safety is the work that places schools and communities on a trajectory to the best possible future.
Oscar Wilde has a great quote, one of my favorites. He said, experience is the best teacher because it gives you the test and then the lesson. And we've learned a lot these last 2 years, and I think we need to celebrate that. Celebrate the things we did well, learn from the things we didn't do good and failed at, and move forward and celebrate those.
As the year wound down with the 2022 MSBA Annual Conference, former NASA astronaut Dr. Bernard Harris reminded the audience at the second general session that the minds of students aren't limited to just reaching the moon, they are infinite.
One of my favorite sayings is that I'm an infinite being with infinite possibilities. And when I'm in a group of students, I will actually force them, especially high school, force them to repeat after me that I am an infinite being with infinite possibilities. That they come into this world with certain skills and abilities that are uniquely theirs, and it's our job to nurture those things. And it's your job, and all of our jobs, to use education to add to those talents that they have. But the most important aspect of this notion of being an infinite being with infinite possibility is this, that each and every one of you and each and every one of them was born for a reason. And we have to help them discover what those reasons are. I can't think of a better thing to do for our young kids, but to enable them, to empower them to be whatever it is that they want to be.
In 2022, MSBA was proud to stand side by side with each and every one of you in supporting our local schools, and we will continue to do so in 2023 and beyond. The day-to-day work continues as we look ahead not just to the moon, but to the infinite possibilities of a new year.
Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Any questions on that or any additional comments? Okay, moving on. There is one person that would like to speak in public comments. Frank.
So you'll have to excuse me because I didn't look into all of it because I was reading it on the way here today. But you guys are going to be discussing some change orders for the new high school. And there were two items within there that I wanted to comment on. One in favor of and one potentially against. In favor of concrete in lieu of asphalt. Obviously, anybody who's driven on public roads will see that if the proper concrete is properly laid, It's going to not only withstand traffic better, it's going to last a lot longer, much longer service life. The item that I was questioning was the roofing material, roofing membrane. So somebody suggested you go with a non-fleece lined TPO roof, and I do not know what was spec'd originally. But you can fleece line any of these roofing membranes, and when you fleece line them, it not only adds to the insulative properties, but it makes them stronger, more tear resistant, and more resistant to impact such as hail. So when we're talking about a savings of $100,000, we're talking 0.2% of the total budget of that $50 million project. So I understand we want to be conscious of price at this point. We're already many millions of dollars over where we planned on being, but at the same time, I would hate to see us cutting corners just for the pure sake of cost and end up getting something less than what we should have, especially when it's important like a roof. That's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, next item is on the agenda is the CSIP reports. Any questions on the early childhood report? Central office? High school. So the comment I have on the high school one, and I gave him this, is for the last 2 years we've seen the, I guess I want to call it the December swoon. Is that a fair, where we see ELA? So, you know, and I think we're starting to see a pattern there, like we saw in, like we've seen at the middle school, where, you know, down and up. Obviously, you know, there's plenty of time to catch that up, but I'm just kind of, you know, curious as why we're seeing some of this stuff for 2 years now.
I think the biggest problem with December is that it's a short month. You know, I think the time to get it in, and ELA, there's more reading on that. It's a little more involved sometimes. You know, that testing process. We're losing 10 days, you know, almost 10 days, but it being a short month is what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing from our staff on that.
So is there any, I don't know if you, I mean, obviously I don't expect the answer tonight because, you know, that's not fair, but I'm assuming you're looking into this and trying to figure out, you know, what we can do in the future so we don't see it. I don't know if it's...
Other than starting December testing earlier, might be, you know, one of the first things I thought of.
Okay. Well, it was just a data trend I noticed, and he and I talked about it, and that was one of the questions I had asked him, so I thought I'd bring it up, in all fairness. Anything else on the high school? West.
I have a question.
Sure.
And I just want to clarify. So on the ELA data, it looks like, am I reading this right, that second grade
That's the second grade data only.
grew
Because
37%?
Yeah,
That's
incredible.
fantastic. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really liked seeing the service learning stuff at the houses we're doing too. That's really good.
I think Elizabeth is going to come and meet with some of our leaders on that and kind of get some more information on what they're doing, so she can share that out.
Okay, any other questions on the West? Okay, any questions on the East? CSIP report? All right. And finally, on the middle school. Just in case everybody doesn't know, Dr. Brander recently got his doctorate degree, so we should, I don't know if he's here in the room or not. But, you know, that's a testament to your continuing education, and we appreciate the dedication that you put into yourself and your professional development, so good job.
And I believe that was from Maryville?
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Someone doesn't work in Marysville, do they?
Not anymore.
But anyway, so in all seriousness, any questions on the middle school? Okay. These were informational items, so there is no reporting. Special education. Dr.
No.
Brooks. No, I was gonna say Dr. Berger.
Oh,
Mrs. Brooks,
yeah.
we'll carry your weight, please.
Did you want to talk about it? Or
Mrs. Brooks, you have the floor.
Okay.
Well, I do have questions
Sure.
while you went through it.
Mhm.
So, before, we always used to have met, not
Yes,
met there,
yes.
and this year we don't have that.
No, and I contacted the state because that was the first thing I noticed when I printed out the report, because that's the first thing I do is look through to see, how many we met and didn't meet. And she said they're realigning the state ones, that they haven't done the met, not met yet. That should come out for the public view, so she said she would let me know, but they have no idea when that's gonna come out. So she told me really to look at your data trends.
Yeah, and then that's what I was saying, because I use
Yeah.
that to say, okay,
Yeah.
are we, I look year over year and say, are we doing better or worse?
Right.
And this year I wasn't able to ascertain, so if you could do that.
Yes, so I have several things that I would like to highlight through here, and I did do a lot of details about a lot of the areas. So first off, on the first, page that says page 2 of 1, I'm not sure how that got screwed up, but as it says under the first chart there, for early childhood special ed count for 21-22, the December one, and it should be 2021, was 37. I wrote 2022. So last year our numbers, we ended the year with 56 special ed students in early childhood, 25 role model, and then 81 total. So, and that's pretty consistent with what we're seeing now. We're at where we were last year about this time. So that's, we like to see that. So, and we're excited about in the future being able to add full day preschool for our students. Let's see. There were several areas that I highlighted that were NA because they were not looked at or they were not monitored last year, but this year they will be monitored because we're going through our tier monitoring system for special education. So when you see that. One thing I would like to highlight is something that we and several of my teachers are here tonight are working on is our early childhood outcomes data. So every special ed student that starts at early childhood, we give them a rating where they're coming in at. So obviously our special ed students are performing below where they should. So the teachers have them in their class for a little while, and then we do a rating scale that this year has changed. It's very, very detailed. We've done a lot of training on that. And then we look at them before they go to kindergarten, and we rate them again. So this past year, we had 100% of our students who entered our program grew significantly in their rate of growth by the time they exited our program. So that's very exciting. And then I highlighted the percentages here. There's 3 areas they look at: social emotional, acquiring and using knowledge, and taking appropriate actions. So the second part that they look at is if children are at where they should be performing. Well, obviously we don't have 100% of that because those are our students that qualify for special education. So they are significantly lower, but they did show growth. So that's kudos to them. Let's see. Couple other things. Last year, our incident rate for kindergarten through 12th grade was at 15.09%. So that went down a little bit from the previous year of 16.89. We do have a high number of students that are transferring in with IEPs. We've looked at, are we qualifying students? Are we really looking at how we're qualifying them? And what we're noticing, it's not the numbers of students we're qualifying, it's the number of students that are moving into our district already with an IEP.
Didn't I read in your report we can either accept or reject that?
For when they move in state, so if you have a student moves from a school district in Missouri, we have to look at their IEP, offer them comparable services because they meet eligibility in Missouri.
So we can't reestablish.
We could if we look through our the reevaluation and we don't think it jives or it doesn't look right, we could reeval them. But normally our psych examiners look at those and say, okay, yeah, those are, I mean, we're pretty diligent on that. If they're out of state, so if they move from another state, we do have to test them to see if they qualify in Missouri, because the standards and indicators are different from state to state.
That surprises me because IEP is a federal level thing.
Yeah, but the way that they can qualify is different from each state. So. Let me look here. One thing, it looks at student assessment data for grades 3 through 12. And it was exciting to see that 100% of our special ed students participated in ELA and math assessments. IEP students scoring in the top 2 ranges, so advanced and proficient for ELA, was at 20.1%. So 20.1% of our special education students were in the top 2 tiers, which that was an increase from the previous year at 14.5%. And they were above the state average for IEP students. And then the top 2 for math was at 17.2%, which was similar from the year before and above the state averages as well at 11.7%. So, at the high school level, we look a lot at our transition and our students that are graduating. There were 78 high school students with an IEP for not this past December, but the December before. And the high school reported 0 students dropping out that had an IEP, so that's awesome. We haven't had that in a while. So kudos to Matt and his staff and Brittany, our process coordinator there. And then one other thing we look at is our students, if they're attending college or if they have a full-time job once they graduate. So when you graduate, we do the 180-day follow-up on all of our graduates. So we look at the special ed students if they're in, they have to be working, I think at least 20 hours a week, or be in college and have so many credit hours that they're taking. And we, out of our 2021 graduates, 25% of our high school students or graduates with IEPs were enrolled in higher education. 80% were competitively employed or in higher education. That just depends on how many hours they're working. And then total employed was at 80%, so that's great. So Brittany does a lot of follow-up on that for us. We have a lot of students that we're looking at on Facebook or calling, or we're going out to their house to see, are they going to college, are they doing something? So, any other questions about anything specifically? So, I think when we get our not met, when they post it for public, I think it's gonna, I think we should be met in the majority of the areas. So, but I'll share that with you when we get that. So.
Thank you for doing all that. It's
Sure.
a huge amount of work.
Yeah, sure.
You signed up for it.
Right.
No, you did.
They're the ones that have to put up.
No, you did. You all do a good job.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the special education report? Okay, we do not need an approval for this. Next item, which there will be an action item, is evidence-based study group. I wish Don Andrews would come back in the room. You might want to tell him we're going to talk about this. I think he's interested in this. Did he leave?
I think he was outside on the.
All right, well, I know Don Andrews participated in the study group, and he had some good insights into some of the things and asked a lot of good questions, so kudos to him. Anyway, so you want to go ahead, Dr. Berger?
Yeah, I'm actually turning this over to who led us out on this, Mr. Smith.
All right, well, yeah, thank you, and good evening. So, in my time here in the district, I went back and counted. I think I've probably served on or led like 12 or 13 different study groups or CSIP plans or different things. And This one was easily kind of both the most challenging and in some ways the most rewarding. It took us a while to get through it. We had 7 meetings, when a lot of times we're doing these in 3 or 4. It was a very diverse group, and it ended up leading to something that I'm pretty proud of, and I think that will benefit our kids. So I want to go through this just a little bit here. So again, this was chartered by the Board of Education back in the fall of '21. We really began earnest planning for this about a year ago now. And so over the course of this we had 7 different meetings. You can see those dates. We had 32 different people participate at least once. I would say we had about a dozen people who were really pretty consistent in showing up and participating. If you go to the next slide, I want to give some kudos to those people. I mean, here are all of the people who participated in some form in this. We did have 3 Board of Education members. We had 10 non-employees who were parents, community members. We had 3 students on that. We had employees who are not parents, 11. We really had 3 people who were both employees, 5 who were both employees and parents. We actually had a board member who's also both a parent and a member of the board. So we got a pretty good and diverse group who participated in this. And so our next slide is simply, I'm going to start with the recommendation and then go through what that means. And so the study group's recommendation is to move both Wright City Middle School and Wright City High School to an evidence-based teaching, grading, reporting, and assessment model. And so when you hear all of that, you're like, okay, that sounds good, but what does that really mean? Okay, what is that going to look like in practice? And to be honest with you, there are numerous ways that could look. We explored a lot of those in our group. We have narrowed it down to what this is what we think this is going to look like in practice here. So we'll go to the next slide. And so I've got about 4 or 5 slides here. Really, we're going to talk about what this looks like in practice here. One of the big things that we want to do is at the middle and high school level is to replace the 100-point grading scale with a 4-point scale. And we do that for a couple of big reasons. One, that it equates all levels of learning. So if you think about this and you think about a 100-point scale, there are 11 levels of A. 90 to 100, there are 11 numbers. There are 10 levels of B, 80 to 89, 10 levels of C, 10 levels of D, and 59 levels of F. So there's a lot of inequity in how we score kids on a 100-point scale, and awfully punitive one way or the other. So going to a 4-point scale where 4 is an A, 3 is a B, 2 is a C, 1's a D, 0 is an F, equates all those levels of learning. They're all the same amount of points, the same percentage. All right, and so like one bad grade doesn't inordinately kill a great overall grade like it might in the 100-point scale. It also eliminates some of the subjectivity in range reporting. So like, what's the difference between an 82 and an 88? Well, I got a 73, I got a 79. What do all those different ranges mean? And so now if you equate that and we just focus on a standard and we just have a specific numeric range that is on the 4-point scale for that, we get rid of some of that subjectivity. We wanted to do something that was familiar to people. I think almost everyone who's attended school or college knows about a 4-point scale, knows how those translate, so that's nothing new. One of the things, and Don's not in here, but one of the things that he was big on, if someone doesn't do what they need to do, there should still be a penalty for that. Well, there's still a 0 range there. It's just not worth 59 points. It's worth the same number of points as everything else. Traditional A, B, C, D, F grades will still be reported. I know like East and West, if you have kids there, there's the standards-based report card where you can really go in and read what those standards are. We will have a degree of that in the actual grade book. We'll talk about that later, but when you get the grade card, it will look the same. And then obviously we have some high school courses that are weighted. Those courses will remain weighted, and we have courses that are weighted to a 5-point. One of the big things that I believe that the committee wanted to function and wanted to focus on is the idea that we needed to continue having a high school GPA. We would still have class rank. Okay, those are still in place with this. And our cum laude system that we use at the high school is still in place as well. Go on the next slide, please. Now, some of these other ones, and I think this is probably, these next 2 bullet points I think are probably at the crux of what we're after and our best practice. We want to base grades only on the Missouri Learning Standards. So we want grades to be based on what kids know and can do with the standards that have been placed before them. And so in doing that, we will eliminate grades for non-academic tasks. All right, so grades for just completing something, grades for showing up, grades for bringing in a signed letter. Okay, the things that do not necessarily measure what I know about the information. And so that will give us a much better and more accurate representation of the knowledge or skill. And why is that important? Well, because then we can help kids. Because very often when you would have, like, we kind of call them the participation trophy grades, so to speak, that get put into a grade book for just doing things, sometimes those inflate grades and mask and hide the fact that a kid can't do what it is that we want them to do. And so by removing those from the grade and focusing the grade on the standards, now we can intervene and help kids because we know better where they are. And so student performance really can't be inflated or deflated by non-academic factors, and we really believe that an accurate grade will lead to better learning because we can intervene and help kids better. And so this would also give us a consistent approach to grading practices. In one of our meetings, we had some people express the idea that my kid is in 7 classes and every teacher has a different grading system. And so if we move to something like this, it would be consistent. And so now, as a parent, you know what the grading system looks like at that school. Okay, next slide, please. And again, we want to separate the academic from the non-academic scores. We think that'll better help students with their performance. Right now, our high school and middle schools use something called the HOW, the habits of work and learning. It's reported, so those non-academic factors are still scored. They are separated from an academic score. We still want to learn on how we can make that and work on how we can give that a little more teeth. And this also aligns a little bit to the grading practices of East and West that have been highly successful, where they are focusing on standards more than other things. One of the other recommendations that we want is that we want to allow students the opportunity to redo or reassess things. When you take an example of this, take your driver's test, for example. If you fail it the first time, you're not doomed to never being able to drive a vehicle. You can practice, you can learn a little more, and go take it again. And ultimately, you get better at that. So we will continue to allow that. And we believe this is going to prepare students better for college and career because we are ensuring that they are learning material and not just dooming them to failure. Okay, next one. Student grades will inform families. This was a big ask of some members of the committee. So parents and guardians can now track student progress. So when I get into the Infinite Campus system or whatever we may end up using at some point in the future, right now that's what we use, but we wanted to make sure that we were clear on that. You shouldn't be able to go in and look at your kid's grade book and say, oh, you got a 3 out of 10 on quiz number 3. That's not very good. Well, what was quiz number 3? Because as a parent, we don't understand that. But if my grade is only reported based on a written standard, now I can track how my kid is doing on the material that is there. And so that is really a transparent way and a clear way for us to know what our kids are learning and what they're getting graded on and how they're doing on those specific discrete standards. So now instead of me getting in there and seeing, you got 3 out of 10 on quiz 2, well, you got a 2 on the 4-point scale on solving equations with one variable. Now I know exactly what it is that my kids are learning and how they're doing on those standards, instead of something that's arbitrary. So that was a big focus. What that looks like when you get into the Infinite Campus system, when you get on that parent portal, we don't know yet. We looked at some examples from other districts and other systems, but ours will be dictated really by Infinite Campus. And I know that Andrea and Dr. Brander are already working through that a little bit and what that might look like, but the limitations of the range of the program will dictate a little bit of that. And any updates, changes will affect reporting, but that's not going to change the recommendations. So next slide. So grade reporting, what to expect. Well, grade cards for middle school and high school are pretty much going to look the way they look now. Okay, but instead of that grade being whatever that individual teacher decided it was going to be, and maybe you have 7 different systems and 7 different classes, it's going to be based off evidence of student learning and understanding of standards, period. Okay, period. Okay, that's what that grade's going to say. And the committee really wanted an average of those standards aligned assessments per course. So the grade card will look the same. What that grade book looks like when you get into the parent portal will be entirely different. And so we again want there to be transparency on student learning and progress. And so now we're going to go to our implementation timeline. Okay. So the implementation timeline that we are recommending tonight is this. That next school year, we will have a middle school, we'll pilot it in select courses, and we'll really start to build a strong foundation for an evidence-based system moving forward. In the 24-25 school year, we're going to go 6 through 8 full implementation. And then in the 25-26 school year, if the implementation in 6 through 8 is effective and works like we hope it will, we're going to roll 9 through 12. And so why are we going with that timeline? Well, here we go. First of all, right now DESE has currently priority standards for ELA, math, and social studies. All right, so they have already identified and created for us what those priority standards are. Those can already pretty easily be put into our system. Our teachers, for the most part at the middle school and high school, are already assessing, grading on those priority standards. So it would be pretty easy to pilot in those 3 areas. So I think, when we said before we're going to pilot in some areas, it's going to be our ELA, math, social studies courses where we have priority standards. It would be really hard to implement this next year because we're going to have to develop priority standards and look to those in our other courses where there aren't any that have been given to us by DESE. There's also going to be some time-consuming Infinite Campus work that's going to take place. Dr. Brander and Andrew are going to have to do a lot of work here to convert our gradebook calculations to a 4-point scale. And we really want to iron out any possible grade errors at the middle school first. And the reason being, why we didn't want to jump in and do this right now at the high school is if we're finding some errors in how this reporting happens, the middle school GPA doesn't really stick with you or impact anything beyond just what you want to say, but high school does. So high school, it could impact high school eligibility, it could impact your GPA, it could impact when you're trying to apply for colleges. So we want to get it right. Okay, so we want to get it right at the middle school before we roll that up to the high school. Some other reasons for this implementation timeline. We've got to train people on doing this. It would be very difficult to train the entire secondary staff in 1 year financially, and just be difficult. So as we budget for that PD, we can scale that in as needed. We're going to need some PD for some people on evidence-based grading practices. We'll need some further assessment training on how to utilize the Infinite Campus system. So we'll space out those budgets. And again, we've got some performance gains happening around the district, and we really don't want big, overwhelming, immediate change in some levels, and just like to shift focus away from what's working. Right. And so to keep that ball rolling. Overall, I mean, this is a trend that certainly isn't a Wright City thing. I think a lot of districts are discussing this idea of evidence-based. As you saw in some of the MSBA board reports earlier in the year, there's a push and there's a study group at the state level to do competency-based, which essentially eliminates grade levels and seat time, and as kids meet standards, they just move through. And age and grade levels are no longer important. We did bring that up to the committee and discuss that. Our committee decided that was not something they wanted to pursue here at Wright City. Okay, but that was something that was a part of that committee. Again, I do, before I take any questions, I do want to just say thank you to the people on the committee. I know that was a big time commitment. 7 meetings. We always said they were going to be an hour and a half long, but I don't think any of them ended in 90 minutes, even though I tried to stop some of them at 90 minutes. There was lots that would continue to happen and a lot of discussion, and it was productive. Because I wish Don was in here. He told me that he was going to come in here and talk about how he started out on the committee and was totally against it, and by the end of it, he was one of our biggest supporters. So I do thank the people who served on it. It was a lot of time, and we did a lot of reading and a lot of work and looked at a lot of information. So are there any questions? Yes, Seth.
I get the rationale for ELA math and social studies. What I'm wondering is will be all of those classes, or are you going to ask for teachers who volunteer to be sort of part of the pilot?
I think that the intent right now is that ELA math and social studies will be piloting.
So all of those classes?
Yes.
How are you going to handle teacher resistance?
I think a lot of our teachers who, we have some of those teachers on this committee, okay, for the first part. I mean, we engaged some of them and had some of them on the committee. And I would tell you that in some of those areas right now, especially in our middle school, I'm looking at some of our ELA and math right now, they're already using variations of this and trying to create a really standards-focused approach to instruction and assessment as it is. So I think that transition will be a little smoother. I know Dr. Brander, I think, agrees with me when I say that the transition in those areas will be pretty smooth. I think that's why we picked them, because SC already has those priority standards. We've already been rolling those out.
Rubrics with all those.
Yes. So that's already been in the works for a couple of years. Anything else?
Great job explaining. I really appreciate the examples because I read it and I was like, what? No. So great job explaining. I do want to, I agree that the how standards, you need to do what you need to do are really important, but they shouldn't be tied to that. But I really am interested in what you find to find teeth for that.
And again, that was certainly something that was brought up in the committee as well. And I know it's something that Mr. Brooks and Dr. Brander are wrestling with even as we speak.
I'm gonna love to see y'all's creativeness there.
Anything else?
Couple things. So, as a member of the committee, the first thing that Doug presented to us was, he took students who got A's, he de-identified the data, and basically, they all got A's, but then when you looked at their state assessments, they tanked. And then I think he showed us a student that got D's, and then when they took their state assessments, they did real well. So so as you're thinking about voting for this, one of the things you need to think about is the idea behind this is if you do an evidence-based grade, then if the kid's getting an A, then that kid is showing that he or she knows the material, and hopefully you get better correlation to state assessment scores versus the grade. So, i.e., if we see that a bunch of kids are getting C's in math and they're coming up to state assessments, then, if we, unfortunately, we may see a lower performing something happening there. So this also allows us then to arrest some of that, and hopefully at the middle school, this will arrest some of that regression that we see in the 7th grade or whatever. The other thing that we talked about is, you know, what about the kid who shows mastery early and often? You don't want that kid to become bored in class or whatever, and you don't want to see a regression to the mean. So one of the things that the committee talked about was, well, that's where we're going to have some lessons available for that child to do enrichment, so that child, if that child's showing mastery or whatever, then we have to be prepared as a school to provide enrichment for that child, so the child's not sitting in class twiddling his or her thumbs and then perhaps becoming a behavioral issue because they're bored or whatever. So that was something else that the committee talked about. Doug, is there anything else that?
No, and I think that's where, back on the earlier slide, we don't have to go back to it, but the earlier slide was like, if your grade is accurate, now I can do more for those kids. Whether that be to provide them something that is more stimulating or challenging, or to provide interventions to assist them in some ways. But if I have an accurate grade, I as a teacher can make better decisions to assist and help those kids. But the grade needs to be accurate in order for that to occur. Yeah, I've just been talking about you.
I apologize, I had to take that. Talking about me, that's my reader's reading.
How invaluable of a committee member you were.
I was wandering around the parking lot.
Were you?
Yeah.
Mr. Smith, I'll wait. I don't want to jump for any board members that might also have this question, but I wanted to bring this issue back around to Heidi. Pinged on it. There's a board member and I that had a long discussion about this a long time ago. I won't identify him, but I think we do have work to do in raising the profile of the HAL grade, the HAL element of it. Because this particular board member and I think is probably would resonate deeply with our community. There is a notion that I should be able, if I'm an average student, there's a notion among folks in general that if like the teacher makes a rule that says, if I have my parents look at my work every day, and if they initial it and I bring it to you, it will raise my score. Or that my participation engagement in class is scored. And all those things are things that we need to work on. But where we're going with this is none of that would reflect in the academic score. But it could absolutely reflect in the HAL score.
But what high school kid's going to care about that score?
And that's why we got to elevate that.
We have to figure out.
And
also,
also,
you still got to learn to do what you're supposed to do.
That's right. And Heidi, the other piece of that I think was, and I'm not putting words in this board member's mouth.
And it wasn't me.
And it was a male, and it wasn't you. But in this, I don't think came out of Dave's mouth. It may have came out of mine, but I thought we were a consensus on it, is that for the right parent, the HAL score might be as important as the academic score. We all want our kids to do well academically, but I can tell you my reason was work hard and get B's and C's and everything's okay. I would say work hard and get C's and everything's okay. And right way I was raised, right or wrong. So I think we've got a piece with the community that we've got to do with this HAL to let folks know that we think it's important. Parents need to embrace it. And then, therefore, hopefully the high school students will embrace it too, because we can infuse some of the extracurriculars into that. Now we've just got a lot of ideas that's got to be developed, but I think I think it's going to be a fun piece to play with, and I think we can strike the right chord there. There, Dave. Isn't that what you believe, Dave, completely?
That conversation was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, and it was a great conversation out in the parking lot. It was really good. Because you had some concerns about the HAL.
That's sort of the character piece that is one of the most important things for success as an adult.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you do want to have it count for something, but not necessarily
academic
grades.
Michael, you have any questions?
I don't think so. I went into it a little hesitant as well. I had a real issue with the redo and reassess, but I think I've kind of come to terms with that, and I feel like the opportunity for the individual to become proficient in the material is far better than just fail and then they never learn it.
Aaron, you want to add anything?
I just want to touch on that, and I was kind of hesitant going in, but like by I think meeting 2, I was like, this makes total sense. Having had a kid who got A's and then got a below basic in math, and I was like, what just happened? Well, she's a good kid, and teachers tend to like her. But you know, the reassessment and stuff, what we had talked about in the committee was you still have to have the want to do that. And so I think that kind of speaks to the work ethic and the Howell score. I asked my high schooler if that had any effect on how many kids had to do finals, because if you still, you know, if you have an A and 95% or whatever attendance, you don't have to take finals. And I said, are there a lot of kids that don't have to take finals? Because you can just keep kind of retaking this test until you get it. And her input was not everybody wants to do it. So the kids who want to succeed and want to keep, you know, learning and making sure that they have that mastery are the ones who are going to do that. And I think that would, you know, reflect just like the same as this. So I think that goes to the House score and this. I'm really excited about this. You know, last year was my last year in elementary. And the report card, the first time I got one, you know, I was like, why is this 5 pages long? But it was nice to be able to see like, oh, you're struggling with division, but you know, by the last term, oh, now you've got it. So it really kind of lines those things out versus like Mr. Smith was saying, quiz number 3, you got a, you know, 2 out of 5. So I think it is very helpful as a parent to have that transparency of what our kids are learning.
Anything else? So there's a proposal out here said for the recommended action. I'm just going to read it and then we can talk about it. To move both Wright City Middle and High School to evidence-based teaching, grading, reporting, and assessment model. And then there's a thing in parentheses that says note timeline. So I'm assuming the timeline that should be in the proposal is one that's in the presentation?
Yes. Correct, yeah.
So is everybody okay with that motion? I mean, does everybody want to talk about that proposed action, or we just want to have someone make that motion with the timeline in the presentation?
I'll make the motion with the timeline in the presentation.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I heard 6-0. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the high school progress.
Yeah, I'm really excited about a change order before the project even started, which may be my first time that occurred, but it's in the positive, and it's all positive, and so we're excited about it. At risk of reading to you and that becoming redundant, I'm going to touch on a couple of them, and of course answer any questions the board might have. PCO 2, potential change order 2, part of that single change order 1, that was spec'd at EPDM. So EPDM and TPO are both poly roofing, but TPO, this is why the bond team, Art and I were both taken aback whenever this PCO came up, is typically a more costly roofing. It's both are polymembrane. I can't, you know, because my knowledge, I don't consider myself a roofing expert by any means. Both are rubber based. TPO uses a different kind of rubber, and then it also has strengthened with fiberglass. Other advantages of it are actually cosmetic, which wasn't a big player for us. You can get TPO in color. Usually EPDM is a real utilitarian. It comes in black. Because this was low visibility, that wasn't much of a player. Whenever they proposed this, like I said, I took hesitation, and so did Art. Art checked with other roofing contractors to see if there was something that we were missing, and so we were eager to jump on the TPO over the EPDM. I can tell you my experience, I've had TPO spec'd first, and because of cuts, and whenever it didn't matter, whenever the aesthetics didn't matter, because it was going to be black and it was going to be, you know, not be able to be seen, EPDM was a good option. I would say as a general, you would say that they're comparable. But I would also say though, when you start looking at some of those, for example, the UV treatment, if I remember correctly, on TPO comes up much better, or, it's resistant to UV. So there's advantages over for TPO over EPDM. Our contractor had just great pricing on it. And it's kind of connected to the other one I'm going to talk to, or at least I believe it is. And Wright Construction is not in our audience. I'm sure if they're listening, I may get a text here. But we went into this project on a narrow margin, and so really any ads, we've got to find reductions for. And the concrete over asphalt, I'm not going to talk about that because I think that's fairly obvious even for a novice person. You prefer concrete over asphalt. I think Wright Construction was nervous about the remediation efforts that might have to be taking place, which are at all their cost for unsuitable soils. And so they had to come hard to try to make up the money that it was going to cost for us to choose the concrete over asphalt. And so I think they sharpened their pencil. They pinched their subcontractor a little bit, and the TPO option came out to help fund that at $95,000. Of course, if you take the net of all those, as it says at the bottom, our first change order actually still comes up with a credit of $29,000. In my mind, all those things are neutral, other than I'll take TP over EPDM in any of the projects I've had a hand in, and I was completely excited to go concrete over asphalt at a cost of $100,000. A little over $100,000. So overall, I'm real excited. Strongly recommend our change order 1. We're going to get out of this with an improved project at actually a credit of $29,000, and we're talking about more value engineering tomorrow at 9:45 with the Wright and Bond team. So I say that I'm optimistic moving forward because I'm also not so naive to know that we're going to find some challenges in this project. You always do. It's a ground-up project. It should be, that's advantageous to not, out of the gate maybe being confronted with too many change orders on the negative side. They're going to cost, but just that, it's the unknown. So recommend change order 1 with all the PCOs.
So the concrete is for parking lots and for the drive.
Yeah.
That goes into
that is correct. 250,000 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it would not include the gravel road that's going to go to F.
It does not include that. No,
Okay.
that was never spec'd as even asphalt. That's right.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
No, that's a good question. It terminates at the ball fields.
Okay.
Dave, any questions? Heidi?
I spent 40 seconds Googling to Frank's question. Looks like, you can fleece any roof. So, but from my quick Google, I'm also not an expert. It might be overdoing it. So when you're in your meeting tomorrow, ask them really what the benefit is, and with the TPO, is it overdoing it? From what I quickly read, it's for roofs you're going to be walking on all the time and using as terraces, well, not terraces, but you know what I'm talking about. So I don't know, I want to do a little more research. But
Yeah, and the irony here is, you're saying the TPO overdoing it. Is that what you're saying?
No, not the TPO, fleecing the TPO.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
Because you can do it on any
That's
roof,
right.
but it might be overdoing it. And I just want to know. So
I think that what you're talking about there, Heidi, I think is the research that is, or some of the questions that Art rose and discussed with us, and that's what he went and research with his with roofing contractors to come back and support the recommendation, or support the change order. Michael?
I don't have any questions at the moment.
Just out of curiosity, what is the change in the snow guards?
They eliminated some and then went to a different model on others. Some that the contractor had used on previous projects that Art was okay with, but they did wind up eliminating some too. Snow guards are on the roof. It's some
on the roof. That's all you needed to
well, no.
Great.
And so to keep snow and ice from falling off on high traffic places that might, on an entry, for example, or something of that nature, where it might pose danger.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I need a motion to approve change order number 1 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? I heard 6-0. Security camera bid for West Elementary. Dr. Berger?
Yeah, this RFP was issued, and I tried to clean this up a little bit in the description. I know sent a memo out to the board too, but we had $50,000 budgeted for it, for this project. In the RFP, we gave the vendors the latitude to give us base coverage essentially, and that's that column on the left. It's kind of that KCAB gave us the lowest number at 39,000, but we also invited them to give us a more enhanced cameras coverage, and KCAB was the only compliant bid that issued one of those at $45,000. We'd like to do that, like to recommend that for West Elementary.
So the motion is to accept the KCABS manufacturer recommended bid of $45,541.18. That would be the bid. That would be the motion.
Do I have a quick
questions?
question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Does that 45 include the annual maintenance, or will that be additional?
It does include the annual.
Okay.
There is no annual maintenance.
Oh, I'm sorry, that is
Well,
right.
that's
There
what I
is
needed
no
to know.
annual maintenance.
Okay,
The
so
only
it
one
includes it.
There was only one that did have the annual maintenance, isn't that right, Andrea?
There's
And that was the one that I
$5,000.
denoted there, yeah.
Okay. I'll make the motion to approve the KCAB base bid of recommended bid of $45,541.18.
What's the timeline for implementation? I'm sorry, just
Sorry.
They were saying approximately probably 4 to 5 months. So it's like 2 months, 2-3 to get the place, and then another while to schedule a team in, because they have to run cables in addition
Sure.
to putting the cameras. So we'll try to work around the school day. I mean, we need it done by the end of the fiscal year, so it'll get done one way or another.
Yep, sorry.
Any other questions? I need a second, by the way.
I'll second that.
Okay, Michael seconded. Any more discussion on the,
About how many cameras is that?
It is, so a lot of these cameras are multi-lens cameras, so this will be, hold on, I have it right here in my document. I just closed. It is 25 cameras with 56 lenses, so it'll be 56 individual views, with a lot of the focus on the outside, particularly where they built the library. There's been a lot of nooks and crannies that took a lot of cameras to cover around that freezer and stuff.
okay, any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? I heard 6-0. Academic calendar.
Yeah, academic calendar for 23-24 school year. Give you a little overview of the process here through the presentation, but I'll always kind of pause here. I've done this, beat this up for 2 or 3 years, but this is another area where the legislator has taken away local control. It really has created some challenges, some unintended challenges with what it does to the equalizing our semesters. And I might even mention, being a little predictive of this legislative session, where now that districts, one way you can get out of a little bit of the issue of what the legislator did by mandating our start date is by going to a 4-day-a-week and limiting your days. So it probably helped that issue that now the legislature is concerned about all of the schools going 4 days a week, and there's bills that have been filed to limit local governments again and taking away that right from them to maybe not be able to go to 4 days. So we'll see that come up. I mean, bills have been filed already, and I think it's going to be a topic of this legislative session. But I am already digressing, and I haven't even started past the first slide. So, but it is somewhat aggravating. So each year, what we do in our process is we have a secondary and elementary meeting. We talk about the current calendar. We take feedback on changes that we might consider. What you're seeing here in these 3 options. The option 1 mostly aligned to the to the current calendar, 22-23 calendar. In fact, it was, I believe only one change, and that was spring break moved back a week, right? And so it worked out. Veronica was pretty excited when she built that. She's like, oh, it works out perfect. We don't have to make many changes. Of course, there's always changes that we want to consider from feedback from the committee. And the next two options are this effort that we've been making that was created by that mandated start date is to balance the semester, the days in each semester. So you can see the first option balances those days to where they're equal, but you could still get out at Christmas break. So you'd have an even number of days before you go into Christmas break, and then your second semester would start. I'm sorry I didn't explain that very well. Got myself a little confused on the fact. So what option 1 does, and that's the one we're currently on and was recommended tonight, was it still kept some of the first semester after Christmas break, which are maybe, arguably, that was discussed, some advantages to that, but typically the secondary folks do not like that for the most part, with a few exceptions. So as we start trying to create a solution for that, you can see that in option 2 and 3, where both of those have this first semester ending before you go on Christmas break. And you can kind of see the domino effect of what has to happen ahead of that on those bullets before. So then when we get that feedback from our committee, piece that we added last year was surveying our staff then. And so then we send out the draft SAP to the committee, the draft survey to the committee. They take any feedback that they have before we issue it to our staff. And as you can see here, as it was issued, came back again at that option 1 at 52%.
I got a question about this slide.
Sure.
Isn't that 52% is a little misleading in my eyes? I think it's more 48% to 52%. I think if you would have asked, do you want to A, keep the schedule as it was last year, or B, change it, then I think you're 52 and 48.
I agree with you mostly, only to say though that the option 2 and 3 you have to get consensus on. So if you don't have consensus, that's where it lays out. But I think the takeaway there is if we can create consensus on a solid option alternative to the first option, then yeah, you are there. But the devil's in the details of getting that consensus. So that's the challenge. And then you're stuck with the thing that always comes up when you survey. You have the opportunity to aggravate exactly half the people, which that's just the necessary evil whenever you're trying to get feedback, you know.
Yeah, but Dave, you also don't know, like, so to your point, 48% did not vote for option 1, right. But how much of that 20% would have said, well, I can't have the option 2, so I'm gonna go with option 1.
I agree. I'm not saying that it's 48-52. But I think that the purple is a little overwhelming to maybe how it could have been.
Yeah, I want to your takeaway was a takeaway we took away, and then also we were thinking next year right now we do an elementary meeting and a secondary meeting because of the end times of getting folks to the committee, but at least drag some of our secondary folks over to our elementary to explain their case on it.
Because does this truly have any impact on the elementary people? I mean, minimal. Minimal. I think
I want to pause there. I say quickly minimally. Anything?
Well, the fall break was
fall break is a big issue for elementary folks.
The Halloween and the days off around there was a big one of the elementary folks, and that pretty much needs to not be there for us to be able to end the semester in December.
And that's got a long-standing history, specifically here at Wright City. There are some of the school districts that don't have that. We talked about that. So a lot of these things, which that's great that we're bringing it up, you know, once you have confidence, we talked about that. That's pretty, not exclusive to Wright City, but if you looked at calendars around,
yeah, but a lot of that
you wouldn't always see it on Halloween.
But when does deer season start?
In the rural areas, that's when they do fall break. That is exactly right. We've had fall break. Yeah.
I've never liked having it drag into the next year. I think that you lose something in your education of high school students, and then take finals now that you've been on vacation for a week or 2 weeks. Yeah. And I don't know if that impacts grades. I would think at some level it definitely has to. So I would really, really like you in the future to put those people in the same room.
Yep.
Because I get it, I get Halloween. I can't imagine trying to teach a bunch of 6-year-olds the day after Halloween. That doesn't sound fun at all. But I think we're doing ourselves a disservice and our high school kids a disservice. And gosh darn it, state of Missouri, this is terrible that you do this to us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we're saying option 1 is really what everybody wants, I will vote yes for it. But I really think if you put all the people in the room together, you're going to come up with something different.
Yeah, we'll try to get them to come to consensus in the future on a solid and maybe make it just a 2, binary decision. You get one or the other. And so that'll be our takeaway within the 24-25 calendar building.
Are people staff asking at all about a 4-day week? Are they getting-
I have never been asked like, why, when will we do it or why can't we do it,
okay.
We certainly have the discussion because it's in the media quite a
Right,
bit.
right.
More with leadership, I had one of my assistant principals and I drug in another principal into that discussion after a leadership team that we had recently. But it's never, it's been in the vein of what's going on and probably with I think a little bit of the traction or the noise that's happening in this legislative session with those bills being filed on, then limiting that. DESE has also kind of come out and has not taken a position on it, but probably like the evidence-based work and the salary work that or the teacher recruitment and retention blue ribbon commission that they put together last year, the commissioner has said that they're going to use that's going to be a focus of study. I don't think she's commissioned a committee yet, but she's signaled that that's likely to happen, I think. So I think we're going to hear a lot about the 4-day week. I think the number of school districts now on a 4-day week is about 25%. I think it's overstated a little bit because that doesn't match up with the number of students percentage-wise.
Oh, sure.
But 20, because it's a lot of rural districts that are doing it. I can tell you that I just saw something on Twitter, I believe it was today, that Fox up here, so that's a very large district, probably 10,000 or more, Fox, is starting to study it too. So like Independence, that'll make a lot of noise as a large district that does it. Long answer to your question, sorry. Ramblings. Apologize.
Well, from a 4-day week, so when I looked at, go back, if you look at the calendar.
I don't think there's a copy of that.
Yeah,
There's an artifact. There's an artifact.
If you look at the calendar, look at how many Mondays you have off anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, 25% of the Mondays you're off anyway. So you're not doing 5-day weeks anyway. But having said that, then with some vigorous conversations with individuals, one of the things that you don't see in the school districts where you have 4-day weeks is the students, their achievement is static. They're not losing achievement, but they're not gaining. And so if your primary goal is to increase student achievement, of those 25% of the districts that you're seeing, I don't think you're seeing student achievement increase from what I've seen. You may find an outlier in there where it's happened or whatever. But so if our primary focus is student achievement, then to me that says, do you really want to go to a 4-day week or not?
I worry about the impact on parents.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we have a lot of childcare opportunities in this area,
No,
so if you
no.
could take it
Well,
out.
and the thing is, so Carl Quaidum's on the Montgomery School Board.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on that, Montgomery went to 4-day, was one of the first districts to do it. And that was one of the major concerns of Montgomery. And Carl said by the time it happened, everybody, parents ended up loving it because, they rearranged their schedules, they did what they had to do. Doctor appointments were made on Mondays. You could get things done with the dentist appointments or whatever were done on Mondays and so on and so forth, where the kids were not having to miss school for that kind of thing. So Carl said, when Carl and I talk about it, It's, a lot of times it's, you know, that's where that conversation goes. And he says the parents in Montgomery love it. But again, I don't know, I'd have to look at Montgomery's student achievement. And I'd be curious to see if they've been able to increase their student achievement from when they started 4-day to now. And I don't know if they have or haven't.
Yeah, I think you'd have to look at more than 1 year,
Yeah.
or even 2 years.
Or multiple schools.
Yeah, and then you throw COVID as a variable.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But, you know, I mean,
Calendar.
we're back. All right, thank you. Good point. So anyway, so there's a we got off track there, and I apologize. Thank you, Aaron, for refocusing. So there is a proposed calendar out there. So any other questions on that proposed calendar?
How many hours are in this school year?
It will be about 1,170. I think it's almost always about 1,170 when we come, and that's
Doug
going
and
to
I
be
looked
looked
at the
at.
elementary, it was like 1132 at elementary.
was what we looked at today when we were doing that,
Yeah, I know in our audit report, that's always comes up in our.
It's 171 days. How many hours is in the school day?
And minimum requirement is 1,044.
So any more questions on the calendar as presented? I need a motion to approve the 23-24 calendar as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I heard 6-0. Okay, so we got the, because of our legislator, we got our updates. So, do you want me to go through them one at a time, or does anybody have specific questions? I know we're not going to read, but does anybody have any specific questions on any specific policy that they want to ask? Again, these will be in consent agenda for the next 2 weeks, our next 2 meetings. So if you want to pull one, you can do that at any time. Did you have anything you want to say?
No, I just moved that on the agenda, so I apologize.
Any questions? Okay, so there is one recension, which is, I think, is that DBB, if I remember right. So the motion needs to move to approve the first reading of the policies listed up there, and then where's the recension at? Rescind DBB.
fiscal
Okay,
year.
okay, and rescind DBB. So that's what the motion needs to read if everybody is good with the policy updates. And again, a lot of this has to do with the legal stuff that happened in Jeff City for.
There's a lot of the word required in there.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion.
There's a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any more discussion? And again, these will be in consent agenda for the next 2 set meetings, so you can pull any individual one if you want. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I heard 6-0. Okay, does anybody want to pull, is anybody related to anybody in employment? All right, so nobody's related to anybody, so we can leave that there. Does anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda? Okay, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? I heard 6-0. In accordance with the provisions of Section 610.021, the revised statutes of Missouri, the R-II Board of Education will meet in closed session in order to discuss 610.021. 2, leasing, purchase, or sale of real estate by a public governmental body where public knowledge of the transaction might adversely affect the legal consideration therefore. 3, hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of particular employees by a public governmental body when the personal information about the employee is discussed or recorded. 13, individually identifiable personnel records, performance rating, or records pertaining to employees or applications for employment. 14, records which are protected from disclosure by law. Need a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? Roll call starting with Austin. Yes?
Yes.
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 Okay, I got 7:26. Let's take about a 5-minute break.